Welcome to We Sing the Bass Electric, a podcast for bass lovers and music enthusiasts of all genres. Join us as we revisit some of the most iconic recordings from different bassists, past and present, discussing behind-the-scene insight and stories that made up some of the most revered albums of our time, all from a bass player's point of view. Now here's your host, international recording artist, Mr. Christian De Masonis, aka Big New York.
Part two of my conversation with Leo Lyons includes his work as a producer, his extensive bass collection, his latest project, 170 Split, and stories about other iconic bass heroes such as Lemmy, Pete Way, and John Entwistle. You know, one thing I learned about your YouTube channel is I didn't know that you recorded I assumed that you used your jazz bass on a lot of recordings, but I didn't know that you changed it up, especially on your biggest hit. You played a Rickenbacker on that recording, didn't you?
There was no reason, no particular reason at all. I was always buying different basses. I bought that bass, I liked the bass, I wanted to play it, so I played it.
Wow. Okay.
But I always went back to the jazz.
Yeah. What does your bass collection look like today?
I before I came online, I wrote down a few things and I realized I'd missed a few out, but I reckon about 20, 25.
25 bases.
And what do we got? Well, obviously Fenders. I've got a couple of Fender basses. I've got some Lackland basses, Sadowski basses, Wall basses, Rickenbacker, of course, acoustic bass, Color U bass, Epiphone acoustic bass, and then a Charlie Chadwick folding upright bass, and also I've got a Warwick electric upright.
Yeah, you have a couple of Warwicks, don't you?
I have 4 Warwicks, yeah. I've got a 5-string star bass, a 4-string star bass, a 5-string CV vintage bass, and a Warwick Streamer Pro bass. I think 30 years ago, I was doing a gig in Germany, and this guy came in the dressing room and he said, my name's H.P. Vilf, I own Warwick. Have you heard of our basses? I said, no. And he said, well, let me send you one to try. So in actual fact, he sent me a couple to try, and I thought, yeah, they sound good recorded. And it was an active streamer bass, different to the jazz bass that I was playing at the time. And so I bought that one. It would be 35 years ago, I guess. And
I found a Warwick bass about, I guess it's been 6 years at least. I found one in a store in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Yeah.
That was a dirty blonde limited edition thumb bass, and it feels like it weighs 4 pounds. It looks like a toothbrush on me. I mean, but it's a incredible bass. I'm crazy about it, and I'm a fan of Warwick also.
But you know, if they took every single bass away apart from the first one I ever had, I'd play it. That would be it. The rest of it's just a circle going around in a circle. You know, I always say it's in many respects it's like a new love, isn't it? You know, you shine for a little bit more for a new romance than one that you've been involved with for a number of years. And I always learn something if I get another bass. But I always go back. I'd play more of the 25 basses. I take them out, and my son often says, why don't you just take one out and do it? But everybody wants to see the jazz bass.
Yeah.
And if I play a 5-string, people say, why are you playing a 5? Not so much now because I'm with a new band and they're new fans, and a lot of the fans don't even know my history anyway. But so I end up playing 50% of the time the Fender or the tribute bass, the Music Center bass, which looks the same and sounds pretty much the same and plays the same, but isn't so much of a financial liability.
Yeah,
Rather, I have
I
to
know.
bury 6 foot underground in lead in an undisclosed location. I mean, it gets to the point where that's ridiculous for a musician, isn't it?
It's very, very scary if you have to worry about your instruments like
Yeah,
that,
it's
you know.
the only way. So, I don't take it on the road. I don't take it out. And if I want to play it, which I have been doing in the lockdown, I've taken it out. Otherwise, it goes back to as I say, an undisclosed
Yeah.
secure location, and then it stays there like a bloody painting that you
Uh,
can't hang on your.
yeah, yeah, I know. It's almost like, some of my basses, I think about putting them in one of those enclosed wall frames with the velvet background and
Yeah,
the humidifier in them, just
yeah,
so I could look at them,
yes,
I have about 11 basses or 12 basses, and
yeah,
I don't get to play all of them. I try to, but I
yeah,
don't get to play all of them.
yeah. I'm,
Um,
I'm not saying I won't buy another bass, but I've got no intention of buying one. I have a few guitars. I still play acoustic guitar a bit. I like acoustic guitar, so um, I have a few of those lying around. Amplifiers, I've got a storage lockup full of them. But funnily enough, I do endorse, as I say, the bass center, Woodstock bass. Any other bass I've never endorsed, I've always paid for, because I don't. If you endorse a musical instrument, I feel morally obligated to play it, and I may not want to play it all the time. So I always keep free hand on that. With Warwick, I say I've got 4 Warwick basses, but no endorsement with them. But I do have an amplifier endorsement with Warwick, and I use Warwick amps now.
I think they really, really are in tune with social media presence. That seems
Oh
to be the
yes,
number
and you
one.
can't blame them, because that's where the money is. I think every musician needs to be these days to earn a living.
Yeah.
But yeah, but obviously it doesn't bother me. I remember George Harrison saying, all those years we played and we wanted to get a guitar or an amp and this, that, and the other. Now we can afford to buy them. People give them to you. I do endorse their strings.
You endorse what? Warwick strings?
No, bass center strings.
Oh, I don't know about them. Oh, thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
they're very good.
Oh, okay.
Sadly to say, up until 15 years ago, I always bought my own strings, and I always broke the bloody things, at least because I'm heavy-handed. Since I've had a string endorsement, I never break them.
Wow.
Never break.
You're
I change them, but I don't break them. Yeah.
you're a round wound or flat wound guy?
I'm on the standard gauge round wounds now. Yeah,
Okay. In the early days, you were a flat wound guy, though, right? In the early
I was.
days.
Yeah, but there were different kind of flat wounds. There were not that. I always get it wrong. They're round. There were those ones where you could run your finger down and feel the clicks in the round, and then there was those like smooth round where you couldn't. And I hated those. What we used to call them tape wounds at the time.
Right.
So
Yeah.
early on, I
Yeah.
was using Labella 760s. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we all were introduced to labella in the
Yeah.
beginning of our career. They were
And
deep talking bass.
I've got a few Labella 760 sets, which I've tried on different basses, but I always go back to using the Elites, because they don't make any difference anymore. The Elites sound just as good.
Oh, okay.
It's all in the finger anyway, in the tone you get with your fingers. So
Yes.
that makes a lot of difference. But yeah, so I'm happy with the strings. They're happy with me, because I'm an endorsee that once a year might say, oh, I could use another 4 sets.
Tough Trip Through Paradise was a great record with well-crafted songs, yet there were no bass songs like Pharaoh or solos like the one
No.
on Woman Trouble from 1969 Stonehenge. What was that a purposeful decision made to exclude bass highlights, or did the music help you determine that it just wasn't warranted?
With 10 years after, I'm not really sure. From my own point of view, I'm never a great bass solo fan. I mean, it's strange to say, but I'm not really. It doesn't break my heart if I don't get a bass solo. I say I'm a songwriter. That album was an album of songs. It was different kind of music, and it wasn't a jam where we warranted a bass solo. I think if you listen to 10 years after music, a lot of the thing was riff bass going into a jam, and a lot of the riffs were mine. So what generally happened was we'd start with a riff, whether it's Love Like a Man or Good Morning Little Schoolgirl, and you'd run that for a time, and then the tempo would change, and then Alvin and I would jam off of each other. So a lot of those licks were really bass licks with Alvin playing over the top. So it was a different kind of playing to taking a song and writing a song and then having the lyrics and everything, and then thinking, okay, what's the bass going to do now? Because the minute I stick a bass riff in, that's going to limit what the lyrics are, you know?
Yeah.
Or the lyric phrasing, one thing or another. So it depends on the music. If I were doing a rockabilly record or rock and roll record now, then I would be playing slightly different and I'd be writing different songs, but it really depends. And musicians change, you know, the musicians you play with change too. As you know yourself, when and I've been playing longer than you, I'm sure, but in the rock and roll, the early rock and roll, though, you couldn't hear the bass drum, so the bass was laying down the groove. The bass was much more at the forefront of the rhythm section than the drum. You just hear a bit of snare and a cymbal here and then. Then as the rock came in and I came through it, you know, the bass drum with the bass drum part, boom, 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 you know, they're all over the place. And most bass players, you know, of the genre that were coming out then, either ended up, I've got to work with that bass drum, play that bass drum. I've got to play eights over it. I've got to play simplify things. And the guitar player coming along over the top, then he's been to, you know, whatever guitar school he's been to. He knows he can play every lick, every scale at 500 miles an hour, and he can play over the top of a drummer, syncopating. So it changes this, you know, the way you have to think. And working with people that come from different genres, I've had to try and get my own thing through, but adapt it to, you know, to work with other people. Sometimes successful. I will not, I know if a bass drum's going boom, 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 unless the song really warrants it, I'm not going to just sit on that bass. I'm going to be doing something different, adding something. You know, and when you think about it, drums, bass, and guitar, they were all acoustic rhythm instruments, weren't they?
Yes, yes.
Started out. It's just that we've all come along a bit. The drummer's found his feet, so to speak, and the guitar player's being amplified. And
you're a songwriter. You have the heart of a songwriter. You think of melody first, and we all, you know, bow down to the melody. The melody is the most important thing in the song.
It is important. I'm not necessarily strong on my melodies. I think lyrics probably I'm a little bit stronger, but I see a song as painting a picture, so everything has to fit in with that picture, like you were doing a video. If it's a sad song, I'm not going to jump in the middle of a sad song and do like a virtuoso bass solo.
Yeah.
Just because, you know, hey, Leo, you haven't done a bass solo. Oh, yeah, I need my bass solo. With the Reform 10 years after, we did 2 records with them, and I co-wrote most of the songs. And the drummer was always saying to the keyboard, you're going to do a solo in this. You're going to do a solo in this. And I thought, why? Doesn't need a solo. Why do you want to do it? It gets a bit ego-driven, you know.
Yeah. Well, today's market, I mean, in today's time with bass players, how far the instrument has come.
Yeah.
You know, there are all of these bass instrumentalists that write everything on their bass. I write all my music on the bass guitar. Yeah, and then I delegate it to different instruments because I don't want to just reach out to one audience. I just don't want to have bass followers. I want to have music lover followers, people, you know, the farther you could reach out to them using different instrumentation, you know. You're the same way.
I'm not really, don't really think of myself as a bass virtuoso. What I'd like to think is that what I do in some way gives people enjoyment and gets a feeling of a song across, or the music across, or even just the fact that I'm enjoying myself doing it. That's important to me. I'm never happy with anything I played anyway. There are moments where you get into the zone where you hit something and it just blows you away. It's like you're a conduit for something way beyond yourself. And those moments are the magical moments for me. The rest of it is, you know, leaning on the technique to get the part across and one thing and another. And there's some great players out there, really great players out there. So I never kind of see myself in a sort of a football type league of players where, oh, I wonder what he's doing and how he's done this, how he's done that. But as I say, I just listen to the music now and hopefully something comes out of the air. I will watch a YouTube video and I'm sure you're familiar with it. There's a bass, what you call it, a bass site called Scott's Bass Lessons.
Yes, I follow him.
And I joined there quite a few years ago, and I've never, I must admit, and if you listen to this, Scott, I'm sorry, but it's actually a compliment. I've never gone through a course, but I've watched a little video and I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea, and that's what I've done. And what amazed me was I watched this virtuoso bass player, and sometimes I don't even know who he is, but you know, saying he's this, he's that, he's played with this, he's that, jazz and this, that, the other. And he starts talking about some specific chords or chord sequences or modes or this, that, and the other. And I started to watch one and I think, oh, that's what I do. Actually, I didn't know that was a Mixolydian lick or that was mostly a pentatonic scale, or that was this, or that was that, because I didn't learn that way. I played guitar and they taught me the chords, and I learned 3 chords, 4 chords, 5 chords, minor chords, 7 chords, knew the triads, and off I went.
Did you entertain the idea of Scott doing a video of you playing your style with your 62 jazz bass? Because it's funny that you brought that up, because you know he does a lot of highlighting of all of these bass heroes of today,
Yes.
right?
Well,
But
I don't know.
you know, you're a bass hero in my opinion. You're right up there, man, to me. You know.
Well, that's kind of you to say. I'm not sure. I mean, I just did something that became natural to me, and
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, those guys can teach well, they talk well, they explain it really well. When I was probably 17 or 18, I taught some local lads to play. I'm not really I don't think I'm a fantastic teacher.
Okay.
Up to a point. I mean, I've been asked a few times. When I first moved to Nashville, the music store boss said, "Well, why don't you do a class?" You know, and I said, "Well, because these guys in Nashville are some of the best musicians in the world. What am I going to teach them?" And he said, "Well, the way you play." And
Yeah,
so,
he has a point. The way you play, what you
yeah,
bring to the table. Yes.
but it's a tricky one. I guess I'd have to go in with my arm twisted up my back if I were to do it, or in a chat basis, you know,
Well, you know, that's what they do these days.
yeah,
These days is the artist is so popular
yeah,
that he could do a clinic.
yeah,
And what he does is he plays his own bass lines
yeah,
to tracks.
yeah,
And that's his clinic. And then he'll ask questions, and he
yes,
might even ask somebody to come up and play with him. I've done a couple of those kind of clinics.
yeah.
They're
I,
they're
I,
they're, they're fun. They're fun, Leo. You should think about them.
yeah, I've done 1 or 2 like that in different countries, and God knows why, because I'm sure they don't even understand the language. But you know, a music store, and you go over and you just play a bit and talk, and they ask questions. But maybe it's something for the future. I mean, the whole music business is changing, and I'm still doing it because I like to stand on stage and play, and that may not be the be all and end all of what's happening, you know, that COVID and post COVID.
You had a successful career working as a producer, hired by Christus Records in '75 as a studio manager at Wessex Studios in London. And you also built 2 commercial studios of your own,
Yeah.
Considering how recording has changed over the years, have you kept up with those changes, and how comfortable are you with today's digital recording processes?
Interesting question. I mean, when I started setting up my own studios, it was like pouring money down a well.
Mm.
And I still have friends that do that, pour money down a well. But I mean, with the digital thing, for $5,000-6,000, you can have a really good recording setup. But it's different. You've got to learn to work with that. I think a lot of young engineers now work with plugins, and they've got the plugins on the drum kit before the drummers even hit the kit. So
Yeah.
there's some strange things going on. So in my heart, I enjoy the analog recording.
Okay.
I like the idea of going, well, there are 4 of us in the room, the song's 6 minutes long, let's try and get it in one take. I like that idea, but I'm quite happy to work within the digital domain too. And a lot of times I do. A lot of times people will say, oh, well, let's say we did a live recording or something, and that for whatever reason or other, there's a problem with one of the bass tracks on the last record I did. There was a problem. Something went down and we lost the track. So it's easy for me to replace that, to work within that domain. Or if I wanted to replace a track on an album we're recording, we can, or not even replace it, redo a part. You can, it can be emailed these days. But it's not so much the energy fun that I like. I like to get in the studio with a load of guys, build up an energy, get a good atmosphere, get a good headphone mix, and go and try and pull something magical out of the air. Because homogeneous recordings that are perfect, to me, I have a lot missing. And a lot of the old records that you listen to, you think, my God, that's timing's dodgy, tuning's a bit dodgy, there's a bum note there, vocals just slightly flat, but wow, I've just sat down and thought about that because I've listened to this record for 50 years and I thought it was fantastic and still do. So there are pros and cons. It's more accessible now. I learned when I was a staff songwriter in Nashville, and I was producing demos for people and one thing and another, but I was also making money mixing tracks for guys that recorded everything at home and then would call me up and say, it doesn't sound right, I can't get it right. And so, I learned. I went to Nashville at the start when it was really the Pro Tools capital of the world. So I learned to work within that genre.
You're pretty savvy, man, with the technology. I mean, you've got your own YouTube channel. You do a great job editing it. Your levels are good. You're playing live bass to a track. I mean, you're pretty savvy, man. I mean,
it's a new thing to me because I saw it as something I needed to do. I mean, audio is no problem. Working with video is slightly different, as you know, but I'm getting my head around it. I try not to be too clever. It's always tempting because you've always got those plugins, haven't you?
I know.
It's like everything else, but
yeah.
I try
I'm guilty of having, because of COVID, I'm home, I'm quarantined, I'm not even working my day job anymore. And I invested about $500 in a PreSonus Studio 5 bundle. And I got to tell you, man, that I'm scared to death with it. I mean, it's like I'm forcing myself. It's quite a slow process. I'm nowhere near where I would like to be, but I've finally recorded a bass solo for a new remix on on one of my songs, and I'm pretty happy with it. But I mean, I got to tell you, man, it's like jumping from a frying pan to the fire, man. When you don't know this stuff, you gotta get comfortable with it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you got there. I haven't talked about my current band, have I, at all?
Well, I'm about to ask you about 170 Split. Your decision to keep the 10 years after Legacy alive was a blessing to us fans of rock and blues. Your collaboration with guitarist Joe Gooch brought the band's sound to another level with your 2004 release Now, as well as your last album, 2019's Live 69 Woodstock, with your current project, 170 Split. So my question to you about this project, which is an awesome project, by the way, is, with the emergence of COVID-19, many of us have had to postpone or cancel live performances. Are there
Yes.
any plans in the works to tour with the
Yes.
band?
Well, yeah, obviously this year was totally all cancelled. Next year we're booking October. I fingers crossed, maybe we can do, I've talked about doing some shows earlier, but nobody wants to totally commit to that at the moment because they're not sure, but we feel pretty confident that October 2021, that's where I've booked the next tour. We were scheduled to go in the studio in April, in actual fact, to make a new studio record with 170 Split, but that got shelved. And of course, all our touring dates were cancelled. And we've just been frustratingly twiddling our thumbs. We've put out a few YouTube videos and things like that, but I really need to get it's possible to put together a track bit by bit and email the parts to people. But for me, the type of music that 170 Split played and 10 years after used to play, it's ideal. You need to be in a room together. You need to be feeding off each other. And I'm sure you can understand that.
Yes.
So that's what I'm looking forward to do. Right at the moment, we're in a lockdown anyway, so there's nothing I can do about it other than bemoan with my fellow musicians about what a pain it is. But
well, you're keeping yourself busy with the YouTube channel.
I try to. I get a bit delayed. I should be doing more. People write and ask all sorts of things. Quite often about something that happened 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
I gradually try and drag it into what's happening now.
Yeah.
And it's surprising. It's in the short time I've been doing it, it's been very, very popular, and it every day something new happens. I've got to keep doing it. I should do another one this week, I think, and over something or other.
Oh, you have to keep on doing it. I can't tell you how much enjoyment I get. I mean, like I was telling you earlier, I stayed up all night watching your stuff. I mean, I really, really enjoyed it. I think, I guess we don't realize the imprint that we leave on with people, right? You've got such a wide imprint, Leo, 50 years plus. I mean, oh my God. I mean, so think about that.
And that's something that I may talk about in the next video, because it occurred to me when it was my birthday last week, and that I got so many emails from people and one thing and another, and I thought, blimey, I'm sitting here being miserable about not going out and playing, and all these people are writing to me. So, I should think myself lucky.
How old are you?
77.
So you're 77 and you're home twiddling your thumbs, and you can't wait to get out back and play on stage. Do you hold up? Do you realize how incredible that sounds?
Well,
I mean,
it depends where you're coming from. One guy wrote to me and said, "You're too bloody old. Why don't you give up and give other people a chance?"
Oh, that's terrible. I can't understand that. I mean, I don't understand that. I'll tell you what I don't understand is how your body can maintain itself. I mean, I can't even stand up for a 2-hour show. I have to perform with a stool on the stage, go and time how long I stand because my body's in pain. I don't know how you do it.
Well, it's the life force, isn't it? And that's what keeps me going. That's what gives me the energy. It comes out the air, and you get a feedback from an audience, and it's just wonderful. The downside is the traveling you have to do.
Yeah.
That's something that I've learned to pace, and that is nothing to do with age, in actual fact, because all the guys I work with are younger than me, and we all find that a bit of a chore. But you can pace yourself to doing that. If I'm not rocking, I'm sleeping. I think that's how I get away with it. Boring for my wife, but that's how I manage to do it. I go into some sort of comatose state until we get to the next gig, and keep going until whatever time we finish in the evening, and then I'll go to bed and get up the next day and start all over again. And I just enjoy it. It's the boss. It's the 2 hours, the 12 hours or so of the rest of the day is okay, but the 2 hours is the important thing. And I get the chance to meet so many people, which I wouldn't have, met, and which, had I retired in 75, I wouldn't have met, because it wasn't the same then. You couldn't go out after a show and talk to people and sign records for them, because it was too much hassle and too many security and one thing and another. So, and I'm still trying to make that record,
Yeah, you're still on this journey where you're not satisfied yet, which I think is a great. It's a great thing to be like that. I feel the same way. I think that's what keeps us going, right?
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
My son said, "Well, why don't you do this, Dad? Or you could do that now. You could go and travel or do whatever." And I'm thinking to myself, actually, I like doing what I do. And it is, in some ways it's pathetic. You go to a record company now and they're going to put a minimum to make a major act, a pop star or whatever you want to call them. They're going to be investing $500,000 in some sort of media promotion. And you come up there and say, "You know me, I'm Leo Lyons. Here's my record. I'm 77 years old. Do you want to put $500,000 into promoting me?" And they go, "You've got to be kidding."
Yeah.
So the likelihood of actually reaching to where I'm striving to be, although I'm happy with the journey. I've always been happy with the journey. The journey, in actual fact, is sometimes better than the arrival. But it's pie in the sky. People would say, "You're mad," but I am mad, but I enjoy it. I enjoy doing what I'm doing. And as long as I can keep playing, what I don't want to do is to lose, through physical age or illness or whatever, to do what's in my head. Once I have to start changing, slowing down, and not being able to play those licks quite as clean as I did, as long as I can keep playing them, improving them, then I'll keep going as long as people want to come along and hear me play. The basis of our touring these days is my agent comes up with a gig. I know exactly how much it's going to cost to do it, and if we can do it for the figure they offer us, then I say, "Yeah, okay, let's do it." And I'm lucky. I'm lucky to be in that position, really, because a lot of people aren't. Most of my musician friends, not the really successful ones, but most of my musician friends, they're like hamsters on a wheel.
Yeah.
You're okay as long as you keep doing the gig, but here's COVID, take a year off. I mean, it's a nightmare for people.
Yeah.
And music is the food, well, art, music included. It's the breath of life. It's the important thing. That the rest of it is bullshit.
Wow.
People need that mute to lose themselves within in a painting or a book or a film or music mostly for me. And I get a lot of people that feel, what people write and say, "Oh, I didn't watch the news. I listened to one of your YouTube videos, and I found it, it gave me something, took me out of all this negative stuff that's going down." And I do the same. I just put music on, not necessarily I'll find something on Spotify or YouTube, maybe an artist that I've missed, or maybe an artist that I've really liked, but I haven't listened to for 50 years, and I just play it, and I think, wow, that's what life's all about. So it's about that music, the creative thing that we all have, and we can all participate in as musicians or as listeners, So that keeps me going. That uplifts me when I get pissed off with things.
Well, you and I are connected to this thing called music and this journey of life. I mean, we're connected. There's so many of us out there, Leo, that that feel the same way you do, that really feel that art, music, freedom of expression, and the
Yeah.
gift that it does. I mean, music heals us, you know.
Oh, yes, it
It's,
is. Yeah.
you
It's
know,
very shamanistic, and you don't have to be a great musician. You could you could go to a a party, a bonfire party, and someone comes along with a guitar and they start strumming away and singing a song that you know, and half a dozen people join in. All of a sudden, you're having a ball.
I know, yeah.
You don't have to be clever to do it, and you don't even have to play to get something out of it. As a listener, you can get something out of it.
For the past year, you have shared some wonderful stories on your YouTube channel. Do you happen to have any stories that you'd like to share here for the first time about your relationships with other bass players, such as Lemmy, Pete Way, Paul McCartney, or even John Entwistle?
Well, of course, I knew them all. It may sound selfish, but it's so difficult for me to find stuff to record on my YouTube channel. Maybe I should save them for that.
Well, you know what? You could. I wouldn't have any problem with that.
Well, I told you I was in the middle of writing a book, and someone said to me, "Don't give too many stories away, or you won't be able to put them in the book." So where do you stop? I'm not going to tell you anything because, yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah. Say, I already know. I could just imagine that if I was Lemmy or Pete Way, and you were my producer, I would be like crawling the walls trying to get in your head. You know what I mean? I would be like, oh my God, tell me about this, tell me about that. Because, even though people kind of idolize some of these bass heroes, you're right up there, man. You're like, the grandfather of them kind of, so,
Thank you. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's,
Yeah. Well, I had quite a long association with Pete over 3 albums, and at 4 actually. I did one with his band called Wasted as well. Lemmy, I'd known for quite a few years before I went in the studio and worked with him. In the end, the record we didn't come out, as far as I know, didn't come out because the label didn't pay the bill, and it was one of those deals. But as they say, Lemmy could be very intimidating to people. I mean, that was his persona, but because he liked my bass playing and I knew him, it was a different relationship in a way that I had with him in the studio. Ace of Spades one will never forget it.
No.
Pete Way's bass playing. Someone interviewed me last week about they're re-releasing a UFO record, and they wanted to ask me about the recording of it. So I listened to the tracks. Good bass sound, but I thought, Pete was a bloody good bass player. People don't think about Pete. They think when you say Pete Way, you think Lycra, rock and roll excess.
Yeah.
And that's it. But when I listened to his playing, and I must have known at the time, because I'm quite particular, obviously, on a good bass part on a record. It was great. It was excellent. Lemmy was different. Lemmy was a bass player that strummed the bass, in my opinion, but he had his unique way of doing it. And he was very loud. Very, very loud.
Pete Way is more of a meat and potatoes kind of bass player.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
Lemmy was a little bit of a diva, in a way, because he had this distorted sound, quick attack, pick attack, and and of course he was the lead singer. It's a little bit different, Pete Way wasn't the lead singer, in UFO, so it was a little bit different,
Everybody likes McCartney's style.
Yeah.
It did some great bass lines, really excellent bass lines. A lot of people compare John Entwistle and myself. In some ways I can see it because John always did those little licks in the song, because if you take the Who, the bass, Pete wrote the songs and he was great, but he was a rhythm player. He wasn't a virtuoso lead guitar player, whereas John was, he played some of the the parts that maybe a guitar player would have played at the time, you know. And so I could see the similarity. In fact, when he died, I was in Nashville, and the front page said, you know, English rock's bass player dies. Everyone thought it was me because the photograph looked a bit the same. But
Oh, wow.
fortunately,
Wow. Yeah. I do see the comparison with Entwistle, though, only for the reason that your stance, even though you were more animated on stage,
yeah,
you did hold your jazz bass. You held your bass up kind of high, and your fingers, your right hand attack was really fast, just like, you know,
yeah.
just like John was. I kind of think you guys are from somewhat of the same school in that sense.
I think you're right. I never listened. Well, that's unfair. I listened to the Who, but I never listened to John specifically. I liked his playing, but I never kind of compared my playing with his or tried to play like him or anything. So it didn't really dawn on me. McCartney apparently has Bill Black's bass.
I know, I know. Is that something that you envy, or is something that you wanted to have yourself?
I don't know. I don't envy him. I think if he would call me up, and he's not likely to, and said, "Hey, Leo, I'm getting rid of Bill Black's bass. It's, you know, X $1,000. Are you interested?" I would say yes. I don't say yes.
Yes, yes. I understand that. I feel the same way about your bass. If your 62 bass went on sale, even though I know I couldn't afford it, but I mean I would still
Yeah.
want to a bid on it at least, you know.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Because it wouldn't. That doesn't bother me. That doesn't bother me at all. I'd get a bigger kick out of having Bill Black's bass than owning my own bass if I sold it.
Yeah.
And as I said, I have to store it in a secret location because of the insurance and this and the other. It's annoying.
It's horrible that you have to worry about that. You have to worry about your home. You have to have like surveillance and cameras and a bunker.
Well, I've got nothing here. They're breaking it. There's nothing here. There's over here. Yeah.
Oh,
But
I love it. It warms my heart that you still have that bass. I have to tell you.
yeah, a lot of people probably would hate me if I sold it.
Yeah, don't leave it in the family bloodline.
They give the responsibility to your kids.
Yes, absolutely.
Same thing.
Yes.
I was offered a lot of money for it, but it wasn't enough money for me to say, yeah, okay.
Do you think a $500,000 would be enough? Would you say? Do it?
I think it would be, yeah. Someone said, someone started saying, "Oh, I reckon it's worth 400,000 and this, that, and the other." And I said, "Well, it's worth whatever you can get for it, you know." But, well, you get to an age where there's nothing you want, only your health. So, and that you can't buy that. So, I've got enough amps. I've got enough basses. I'm working with, in 170 split, I'm working with a great group of guys.
Yeah.
And we make records and we go out on the road and people come along and see us and we have a good time. So what more can you want?
If you enjoyed this educational music program, please subscribe to We Sing the Bass Electric on your favorite podcast platform. We would love your feedback. Email us at WeSingTheBassElectric@gmail.com. For bonus material and a chance to win merchandise, such as autographed CDs and more, subscribe to our YouTube channel and join our mailing list at WeSingTheBassElectric.com. As always, thank you for your support. And please buy music from these spotlighted artists. It makes a difference.